Hi guys, Simon here from Go Study Australia. It's a really strange time in the world right now. We've got lots of people asking lots of questions about their stay in Australia and how the coronavirus will affect their ability to stay in Australia. We've got one of our trusted migration agent partners here. This is John Granger from Granger Australia Visa Solutions. We're going to be talking about some of the most frequently asked questions and giving you the support and advice that you need. If you have any further questions throughout this interview, please contact us at Go Study, and our counsellors will work with John to give you the advice that you need so you can have the best experience possible. You ready to get going, John?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this. All right, so one of the most common questions we have is what working rights changes are put in place now that people are on a student visa?
So Simon, at the moment, the general work rights for student visas haven't changed, except in specific circumstances where the Australian government has worked with supermarkets and aged care providers. In those instances, employers are registering directly with Home Affairs to allow their students to work for longer than the 40 hours per fortnight. Students should check with their employer if they are eligible for that. Students in other industries are not yet eligible.
That's right. So at the time of recording this webinar, the 24th of March, there have been no changes apart from a couple of industries. However, information is changing week to week, and we will be posting information on the Go Study website.
And more industries are approaching the Department of Home Affairs to seek further concessions in the same way.
Yeah, right. One of the more common questions we're getting as well is, what if I can't get home and my visa is going to expire? For instance, you're on a working holiday visa or a student visa that expires next week, but there's no flights.
So unlike some media reports I've seen, there is no miraculous extension to your visas. If your visa is expiring, regardless of any visa class, you must be able to apply for a further visa in Australia. That means you must meet eligibility for that visa. Whether that's a further backpacker visa, you need to have met the requirements for the second or third year extension. Otherwise, a student visa or a visitor visa, and an appropriate visa subject to your circumstances to apply in Australia. If you do not, you become unlawful, which is far worse.
And that's a really important point, guys. There's been lots of fake news going around that people will be able to just stay in Australia while their visa is expired. As John said, that is not true. You will need another visa to move on to in order to stay lawful. Otherwise, you will face penalties such as detention and big fines as well, and possible bans on returning into Australia afterwards. So if you do have a situation where your visa is soon to expire and you cannot get home, contact Go Study immediately. We'll discuss a range of options with you, including a student visa, possible more permanent visas where we'd refer you on to a partner agent like John who can help you with some solutions as well. It's really important you take note of this. You are not allowed to stay in Australia if your visa has expired. Some students have also asked us, will my visa get rejected if I'm from a country that has a high infection rate with corona? Will the government be biased against me based on the country that I'm from?
Absolutely not. Australian health requirements for all visas are based on the person's health situation, not the country of their origin. Some countries have always had a higher health risk, such as tuberculosis, so we've always had X-ray screening. It just changes what type of health assessment may be required, but your personal health is the only matter for an assessment or the basis of a refusal.
Cool, good to know. Some people have also asked us, what if I need to extend or defer my course? Will I need to pay for a new visa? Will there be any special exemptions granted?
At the moment, there are no exemptions to paying for visas, except where in circumstances where offshore students have had their student visas cancelled, which occurred when the travel ban for China first occurred. Any students onshore, if you need to apply for a further student visa, you would need to pay the visa fee appropriate for that visa.
I think it's important saying this is time sensitive as well. Again, recorded on the 24th of March, this is the case. There has been discussions with the government about changes to the payment policy, whether it be a reduction or a cancellation of that, but at this time that does not exist. So as it stands right now, all visa extensions do require full payment.
The only exception that could occur, which is an existing one, is where an education provider actually goes out of business, where students are having to extend their visas because they've been out of studies in those circumstances, there is a waiver on the student visa fee that has been around for a long time for consumer protection. That does not exist where the student defers study at the moment and the provider is still in business.
Let's expand on that a little bit more, because what Jonathan's talking about here is called the Tuition Protection Scheme. That's called TPS. If you're at a school that closes down because they can't stay financial anymore, you will have the option to register under TPS, and there are several benefits if you're under this scheme. Firstly, you will be given the opportunity to transfer to a new school. The TPS will try and negotiate the same rate of fees for you, or you'll get a full refund on any of your unpaid tuition fees from your previous school that you can then move into your next school. The other benefit is if you then need to apply for another student visa, whether it be for an extension or for a brand new visa to do a new course, if you apply within 12 months, you will be able to receive that student visa for free. There will be no charge. Are there anything else you'd like to add to the TPS?
The main thing is where students find themselves in situations where the education provider cannot deliver their course, either because they may close because of the current health problem or because they've gone out of business, you must ensure you get advice. Connect with the provider, connect with the Australian government authorities, stay included in that process. If you're confused, contact Go Study Counsellor to make sure you're part of it. You must maintain enrolment to maintain your student visa. There are extreme circumstances where immigration will look at those things, but only if they know about your situation. If you are not part of that process and you've disappeared into the system, your visa could be cancelled. So make sure you're engaged with Go Study and your education provider at all times.
If you are in a situation where your school does close down, don't stress. TPS is there to protect and support you. You actually have up to 3 months to find a new course of study, and during that 3 months you will be given full work rights. So rather than the 40 hours per fortnight, you'll be given the opportunity to work full-time over that 3 months to support you during the process. TPS when a school closes, it can be a little bit worrying about what's happening to me in my future, but TPS has been provided by the Australian government to support international students and maintain the reputation and quality of Australian education. So far it's been working very, very well, and if you have any questions, please contact us at Go Study. We'll give you full support all the way through your issues.
Simon, also on that point about work rights, it's important for students to also understand in these confusing times, if your provider has given permission to defer your studies, then during that period you are out of session and able to work full time. If your provider has moved you to online studies, you are not out of session. You are still studying technically, and therefore you are not full-time working, even if you're not physically attending the campus. So it's important to understand what your situation is on each college.
That's a really, really good point. If your provider is providing online courses, you are not on holidays and are still required to comply with the standard working arrangements. Thanks for that, John. Great point. John, have you seen if there are any delays in processing student visa applications?
At the moment, delays have not yet occurred, but the advice from the Department of Home Affairs has already telegraphed they expect a delay. Current advice is 74 days to 4 months processing for a student visa. We expect that to be a result of what the Department of Home Affairs expects to occur within their workforce. If they have to send case officers home as well, case officers in Home Affairs cannot work remotely because of national security measures that doesn't allow them to access the systems from home. So that would very much create a stand-down situation with the productivity there. If you're on a student visa application and you have a bridging visa, or any visa you've applied for and it's in Australia, you have a bridging visa. That will keep you lawful for as long as it takes for the Department of Home Affairs to process your visa.
So if somebody is on, say, a working holiday visa, they apply for a student visa, but it's going to take 4 months for it to come through. Tell us about the bridging visa. Can they go to school on a bridging visa? What are their work rights on a bridging visa?
So the bridging visa carries across the same visa conditions as your previous temporary visa. So if you last held a working holiday visa, then your work rights transfer and continue to be the same work condition as your working holiday visa, which is full-time work, but with a 6-month work limitation. So you can still work full-time until the student visa is granted. Your working holiday visa does not allow you to study for more than 3 months full time. So if your course has started and you've commenced studies, then you've also got to be careful of that rule. But that, I think, is where a practical element from Home Affairs under policy would allow for an exemption to that compliance.
Okay, fantastic. So let's get practical. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of temporary visa holders here in Australia, particularly working holiday visas. They're off on doing their farm work. They may not be able to complete their farm work before their visa runs out. What are their options?
So again, we have to be very clear about the fact that Home Affairs can only change the visa rules to a certain extent without full change of law through Parliament. Visas have legislation and policy. They can be flexible with policy, they can't be flexible where legislation needs to be formally changed. So a working holiday visa maker who has not met the requirements for the extension because they are short of the days that they need to do for farm work cannot be granted a further second year working holiday visa. If their visa is expiring, they must get immigration advice about their options, but it's likely that the working holiday visa will be refused on a second year extension. That's why a student visa or a visitor visa at the very least would be more necessary. You cannot just assume that they will exempt all the laws in this country.
Can somebody move onto a visitor visa from a working holiday visa while inside the country?
Absolutely. I have never seen in the history of the world any working holiday maker or work and holiday makers with no further stay conditions on their visas. What has been misreported in the media is that no further stay condition seems to exist for a lot of backpackers. It does not. It is a much higher risk condition that applies to certain visitor visa holders from high-risk countries, and those things are being worked through with fast-track waivers. But for the wide working holiday maker community, there are no such provisions. You can apply for a visitor visa, a student visa, and pretty much any other visa if you're eligible for them onshore.
It's important to note on a visitor visa, you do not have work entitlements, so you cannot work while you're in Australia. And this is why a lot of people prefer to move onto a student visa because they are able to work while they're studying. There are a lot of very cheap courses out there right now, so you can actually take on a nice flexible course to allow you to stay in Australia, maintain your work rights, and when this all blows over, you'll have a great job and be able to continue your Aussie experience.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. We've got lots of people who are confused about, do I need to go to school if I'm currently on a student visa? I'm scared about my health.
It's the same problem as Australian parents have with their own children right now. The schools have not closed unless your college has formally said you do not need to attend and therefore they have enacted formal deferral of study policy, then you are still required to attend. Individual cases of the schools will be where you engage with their school's individual policies in exactly the same way as Australian parents are having to do the same thing with government and private schools in Australia.
So if a school has said that all classes have been moved to online, does somebody need to physically attend campus?
No, if the course is approved to be online, and that's where some flexibility is being given by government. A college that is registered for international students will only move to 100% online delivery if they have been approved by the Department of Education and the Department of Home Affairs to do so. My understanding is that those approvals are in place on a college by college basis, and therefore you need to follow the advice of your college. Get it in writing, follow what their advice is only if they are sending you formal written notification that it's acceptable.
And if somebody wishes to go back to their home country, whether it be Europe or Latin America or anywhere else in the world, and classes are still delivered online, are they entitled to still continue their studies while they're back home?
I would expect that they should be. That's a matter for the education provider, but there would be no reason why they can't continue, if they've paid for the education and it's delivered online, to receive it from anywhere that they've got a decent internet connection anywhere in the planet.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So can somebody apply for their work and holiday visa inside the country now? And would it be possible to do that in the next few weeks?
No. So an initial work and holiday visa, that's for the first one,
Yep.
Has never and does not have the legal basis to apply in Australia. Certain visas have those restrictions that the initial visa must be applied outside. The work and holiday and the working holiday 417 and 462 subclasses must be applied for outside of Australia. There is no change to that. And if you are here on a visitor visa or a student visa and were eligible to apply for an initial working holiday visa, and you can't leave Australia now, or if you do, you can't travel back on that visa because of a travel ban, you need to consider other visa options, like a student visa.
And given that flights are ridiculously expensive because most airlines have cancelled their flights, we expect most people won't be able to travel outside the country right now. If that affects you, please contact us at GoStudy. We'll talk about a bunch of options with you, and if necessary, put you in contact with someone like Granger Australia Visa Solutions. Sorry, I have to get the name right, so we can make sure that you get the best advice possible. All right, we've covered a little bit about working holiday visa concerns, student visa concerns. We often get a lot of comments and questions from people who are on sponsored visas, and they're worried about their situation here in Australia. So given that there are some people who are losing their jobs, we've had a few people ask us, I'm on a sponsored visa, what happens if I lose my job?
Right. Now, we have a large number of clients who are both employers and people sponsored as well. This is probably the number one question circulating amongst the migration industry, with further questions yet to be answered by the Department of Home Affairs. As it is right now, 24th of March 2020, the rules are quite specific. If you're an employer-sponsored visa holder, you must maintain your employment with your nominating sponsor, and that must be full-time employment. So if you lose your job, the current rules are you must find a new job and transfer to a new sponsor within 60 days, or you need to change to another visa, or you need to leave the country. You've got a 60-day grace period before visa cancellation. There are no changes to that legislation or policy at this point in time. The option to reduce your hours, employers are talking about not terminating employees but maybe standing them down or reducing their full-time hours to part-time. Those are non-compliant with the TSS 482 visa at this point in time. That does have further answers that we need from the Minister and Department of Home Affairs on that matter. Those matters have been raised wholesale through the entire migration industry, and employer groups, employer Chambers of Commerce, Migration Business Council of Australia are asking those questions. But the legislation is relatively inflexible at this point in time. If you're in that situation, you need migration advice. It's as simple as that.
Yep. And in those cases, one of the most common outcomes is moving on to a student visa.
Absolutely.
It's quick, it's easy, and it's flexible. How do you feel someone would go transferring from a sponsored visa to a student visa and meeting the genuine temporary entrant requirement?
So this is nothing new. We have people throughout any time in the economic cycle and the world's global health cycle where they are losing their jobs on a temporary sponsored visa. So it's very common for them to move to other visa options in Australia if they can't find a further sponsor, including student visas. All student visas have a simple criteria, which is it must make sense in terms of what are you choosing to study. Is it consistent with your background? Is it career enhancing? Is it genuine? So students, potential student visa applicants, need to choose a course that makes sense in their circumstance, as well as make sure that they have the financial criteria to meet that requirement. There can be some degree of flexibility applied in the current situation around the genuine temporary entry, because that is policy so much as a legal change. But at the same time, you must still be able to meet the requirements of a visa, that you're studying a genuine course with genuine intent to study as the primary objective, and that you do have the financial support to actually apply for that visa and meet your tuition and living costs.
Yeah, great. So if you are in that situation, please contact us. We can put you in contact with John or one of our other trusted agents in any of our cities around Australia. But more than ever before, you're going to need advice and support from the experts. Whether you're on a working holiday, student visa, sponsored visa, your situation is changing, and we're getting new information every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It's very confusing for the general public, particularly those that don't speak English as their first language, and that's why more than ever before you need to rely on the advice of education agents, migration agents, and industry experts. If you need any help at all over the next few weeks or months about your journey here in Australia, please contact us at GoStudy as your first point. Once we've assessed your questions, we'll put you in contact with an expert like John here who can provide you with advice and support and find you the right pathway to get through to where you need to go. GoStudy Australia deals with thousands and thousands of questions every single week. We're happy to help. That's exactly why we're here. Our purpose and mission is to create a life-changing experience for you while you're in Australia. We're here to help. Tell us how we can help. We hope to see you in our office or hear you on the phone sometime soon. We'll see you down under. Thanks very much, guys.